first thing we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to spray the bottom of your guys' shoes with isopropyl alcohol. There's this thing called white nose syndrome. It is this fungus that will decimate bat populations if they get it. So long story short, we're not trying to get it. So the easiest way to do that is just show me the bottom of your foot, keep that toe on the ground. Dell's going to start from that side. I'm going to start from over here. It's just isopropyl alcohol that'll kill those fungal spores on contact. And the bottom of the feet is where we track most stuff. So that's why we sort of target that. It's just blue bat pee the oils from their skin, they get stuck up on the ceiling. Guano was actually used in fertilizer, TNT, and up until 2010, 2011-ish, women's mascara. Yeah, talk about bat in your eyelashes. We do have about 7 to 11 species of bat that use the cave itself, and then 23 species of bat about that use Colossal Cave Mountain Park as a whole. If you guys do see a bat today, it's most likely going to be the cave myotis or the Townsend big-eared bat. Cave myotis is a super small insectivorous species of bat, about the size of my thumb. We do call them our flying chicken nuggets around here. And then the Townsend big-eared bat was slightly larger with those big old ears, also an insectivorous species of bat, and one of 4 big-eared bat species in the world. So I think that's super cool. Another cool thing about our bats is they actually migrate up from Mexico in June, July. So June, July is our peak bat season. And funny thing about that is only the female bats do that migration for the most part. The male bats tend to be some deadbeat dads down in Mexico for the summer vacation. But the female bats actually come up here and they use the cave as a maternity site. So they'll actually have their babies in the cave and raise them for the first couple months of their lives in here as well. So if you guys were in here June, July, you would have seen like 50 to 100 bats possibly just roosting over my head in this room, and all throughout the cave there would have been hundreds of bats. It is not June, July. We are out of peak bat season right now. Most of them have migrated down to Mexico, so if you guys do see a bat today, it'll probably just be a little straggler hanging out on his own type thing. Okay, and then does anybody know what a coati or a coatimundi is? Yeah, it's sort of like a raccoon mixed with a lemur, almost. They look like a raccoon, except they have a longer snout. They tend to be more brown, and then they have that really thin lemur-like tail. But they're actually so closely related to raccoons that they have those hands, fingers, and thumbs that raccoons have. So we actually constantly find our coatis down at our campground unzipping people's backpacks, tents, purses. We actually had to relocate our margarita machine in the cafe because the coatis kept breaking into it, and we'd come into several drunk coatis up there. So they are just as troublesome as your normal trash pandas, as your raccoons. And I actually sort of think of them as the raccoons of Central America because they're found mostly in Central America, and then Arizona and Texas are the northern parts of their range. And then last thing for this room, guys, you guys see that brown color up on the ceiling and the black color going to the entrance? That's all ancient smoke staining from the Hohokam people, who we think would have been the first inhabitants / visitors to the cave. They would have used the cave from around 900 to 1450 AD. And if you guys know something about the Hohokam people, you would know they were somewhat nomadic. So they did this big old loop through the southwest of North America, really Arizona, New Mexico, Mexico area, and leads us to believe they did not use the cave as a permanent residence. They used it more so as a pit stop on their journey. So they would have made their fire in that little cobweb-filled hole down there, you know, eaten, rested for a few days, a week, something like that, and then continued on their journey. A couple other things about the Hohokam. First off, the hole they came through would have been a 2.5-foot hole in the side of a mountain, so it was eventually made bigger so you guys didn't have to crawl in here after me. Also, the Hohokam did not come much further than I'm standing down here for 2 big reasons. First off, these were the Native Americans, and they weren't stupid, but they also didn't have flashlights. So if you had a torch and a primitive lantern, would it be a great idea to go wandering into a dark, scary cave that has no food or water for you? No. They also weren't dumb, so they really didn't do that. Second reason is you guys probably know the Native Americans are very respectful of the land. That was no different with the Hohokam. They actually thought of caves as sacred, so it's more so some time just to be spiritual. Really appreciate the cave for giving you that shelter from the desert. This in here is our crystal forest. We call it that because of all these cone-like structures coming from the ceiling, so it looks like an upside-down pine forest. Does anybody know what these are called?
Stalagmites.
We're very close.
Stalactites.
Yes, it is tight because it hangs tight to the ceiling. However, it is also stalactite. There's a C in there for ceiling as well. And then this guy right here would be a stalagmite, because you might trip over them. Then there's a G in there for ground as well. But stalactites and stalagmites are calcite crystals formed from calcite-rich water dripping off the ceiling and onto the ground for thousands and thousands of years. Think of it like an icicle made out of rock, except it takes this icicle 100 years of the correct water flow to grow a half of a cubic inch. So very, very slow process. We also have our flowstone and our dripstone right here. So flowstone's the stuff in the top and the middle. Dripstone's the stuff in the middle and then down at the bottom down here. But that is also calcite crystal formed from calcite-rich water dripping over the pre-existing rocks for thousands and thousands of years, sort of forming a calcite shell over those rocks that were already there. And then do you guys see all the dust all over all of our crystals, all over our rocks? Yeah, no, I'm not a bold-faced liar. Our bats have been flying in here longer than people have been coming in here, dusting our rocks with dirt, pollen, other dirty stuff that provides a protective layer for the rock. It also actually provides enough friction that when water drips down the rock, it sort of slows down, helps that crystal grow a little bit. And that actually brings me to this guy right here. His name is Old Baldy, and Old Baldy has a tradition going back to the late 1800s where the first explorers of the cave would come in here and they'd rub Old Baldy's head for a little bit of good luck before they kept going deeper into the cave. This did permanently damage Old Baldy, guys. You see all that exposed calcite crystal? Yeah, if water were to drip onto his bald head, it would just slide right off at this point. There's two big reasons for that. The first one is the obvious one. He's missing all the dust on top of his head, and that means he's got no friction up there. The other reason is, I told you guys, it's the oils and the sweats on our hands that actually ends up sealing the rock over time. And if you guys know how oil and water sort of react with each other, or interact, that water just beads right up and slides off of his head. Now, we actually recognize around here people have been putting their grubby paws on Old Baldy for 150 years or so. He has been permanently damaged and sealed off well before any modern tours. So we actually recognize this and we utilize Old Baldy nowadays as a get it out of your system crystal. Now, with that said, couple ground rules / warnings first. First off, keep it to his head, you freaks. He did not give you consent to touch the rest of his body. No, we're trying to protect the rest of that dust pollen layer on him. So if you are going to touch him, just touch the white spot where he's already been permanently damaged. And then, fair warning, people have been putting their grubby paws on him for a century and a half, and we can't come in here and clean the formations. Meaning he's got, quite a lot of germs on him. So we will be passing Old Baldy on the way out. If you guys want to rub his head on the way out and then wash your hands shortly after, I would not call that a dumb decision. Yes. Okay. And then, does anybody notice anything weird about our stalactites up here? Yeah, a lot of them are broken, chopped, flat. That is an example of cave vandalism. It actually brings me a first modern guy to discover the cave in 1879. Guy named Solomon Lick owned a hotel about a mile from here, was looking for his lost cattle. Came across that 2.5-foot hole in the side of a mountain and did what any sane person would do and climbed inside of it. Did not find his cow in here, but he found a beautiful cave and decided to use it as a gimmick for his hotel. So, you'd stay in a nice hotel, he'd bring you here, you'd explore the cave with him. Two big old issues with that. First off, Solomon was trespassing. He did not own the cave in any sense of the word. And then secondly, he would tell you to come in here and take whatever souvenirs you wanted. So they would lasso down our stalactites. They would shoot them down, which I think we all agree is super smart to do in a cave. But they would keep them as souvenirs for the calcite crystals. Some were found being used and sold as doorstops, as well as calcite crystal is actually made up of calcium carbonate, which you might recognize as the active ingredient in Tums or antacids. So there actually are accounts of our crystals being ground up and used as a version of cowboy Tums. Now, real quick, I really don't get political at all in life. Definitely not at work or in front of kids. But one thing I do mention on all my tours is this is why conservation is important, people. That's just a couple thousand years of geological growth at the bare minimum that went to cure some cowboy's bellyache that would have lasted 3 to 4 days. So hopefully he got 1,000 or so years worth of Tums out of it. Now you guys get my point. If something takes this long to form, we should probably protect it for future people to actually see it. Okay, I will hop off my soapbox though. We're going to head on over here. That's perfect. I'm going to introduce you guys to Fang. This hanging over my head right here is Fang. We call him that because he's got that fang molar combination sort of going on. Also, if you're about 5'6" and you don't want your step coming down these stairs, he's awfully good at taking a bite out of your noggin. Now with that said, what's actually really cool about Fang is he is the largest known stalactite formation in the cave. So of everything that's been explored, he is the largest stalactite formation they've found. Given what's been explored, he is most likely the largest stalactite formation in the cave, I'll just tell you. But does anybody want to guess how much he weighs? A lot is about as correct as you can be without saying a number. 5,000, that's almost on the dot. He's about 2 to 2.5 tons, so that's about 4,000 to 5,000 pounds. It's like a 4-year-old elephant or a Ford F-150 hanging over my head. Either way, I keep begging this place to give me better life insurance. How do we know how much he weighs, though? Yeah, so the fun answer is we chopped him off, we brought him out of here, we weighed him, then we grill glued him back up there. Yeah, we didn't do that. So we know he's made out of calcite crystal, so you know the density of calcite crystal, then you measure Fang's volume. With the volume and the density, you can calculate out the weight. So that is why I say 2 to 2.5 tons, because it is a scientific estimate. We didn't chop him off, we didn't get an exact weight for Fang. And this is going to be the biggest room we're going to be standing in today, guys. This is our drapery room. We call it that because of this big old formation hanging over my head over here. Looks like a big old set of curtains or some drapes. This is, once again, our flowstone into our dripstone. And once your dripstone forms a big old slice like this, or like these guys in here, geologists are very hungry people, and they called it cave bacon. So, in between our slices of cave bacon, you guys see those needle-like structures in there, sort of going side to side? Those are called helictites, and helictites are really cool because they're the only crystals in the cave that don't grow with gravity in the flow of water. They actually get forced out from water pressure, capillary action, and geologists will have whole debates as to how specific ones form sometimes, but they're the only crystals you'll see growing horizontally, diagonally, and in some really weird spaghetti noodle looking structures in our cave. So just a super cool, unique crystal there. We also have a super rare mineral that's only found in 2 caves in Arizona, my understanding. Called a fiberglass. Yeah, those are fake. And then real quick, actually, you guys on this half of the room, I'm going to scoot towards the middle of the room, because something I like to show you guys in here is actually this line going through the ceiling. It's actually the fault line that formed the Rincon Mountains we're standing inside of. So that is a fault line going through the earth up there. You can see it goes through the cave really clearly that direction. If you peek through that hole, it keeps going way back there. And then it does go the other direction through the cave as well, but that's literally the fault line that formed the Rincon Mountains we're standing inside of. So that's one reason I'm thankful Arizona is not seismically active as I'm working in this cave. But just really cool that you can literally see the fault line that formed the mountains. Speaking of our formations here, when a stalactite and a stalagmite, eventually a stalagmite in the middle, you get a column. That's just what we call them. Okay, so I told you guys 1/2 inch every 100 years for our stalactites and stalagmites, right? That gives you a max of 1 inch every 100 years if you're going from both directions, given perfect water conditions. How long do you think it took this guy to form?
Too long.
1,000,000 years.
Yeah, so too long and 1,000,000 years are pretty accurate. If you just counted the inches on this guy, he's like 7 feet or something, right? That's like 7,000, 8,000 years if you just did 1 inch every 100 years. That's also assuming he had perfect water the entire 7,000 to 8,000 years. I will tell you guys, this guy was lucky if he had perfect water conditions less than 1% of the time. So realistically, it was hundreds of thousands of years, closer to millions of years at the bare minimum. And if he got somewhat unlucky, that easily could be millions of years to form a column this wide and this tall. So I think we should call them super columns actually after they get to like a certain geological significance. But you guys see the broken stalactite slash what shoulda, coulda, woulda been a column right there? And then the broken stalactites up there as well. Yeah, you guys will see cave vandalism for the entirety of the tour. Ended up going on for about 44 years, but now I get to tell you guys about the guy who saved the cave in a sense. So in 1918, a guy named Frank Schmidt moved out from Germany, just happened to stay at Solomon's Hotel one of his cave tours. Saw the cave vandalism going on, and Frank was just really pissed to see how Solomon was treating the cave. So Frank saved his money for 4 years, and in 1922, he bought the mining rights to the cave. That's how you would have acquired a cave back in the day, and most importantly, it meant Frank was the one to make the rules. His first rule for the cave is you can't come in here without a tour guide. Does anybody want to guess the only tour guide at the time? Yeah, so for 25 cents, Frank could give you a candle and a rope, and you'd come explore a cave with him. Keep in mind, no floors, no stairs, no railings, no lights, still a 2.5-foot hole as an opening. Also, Frank was really quirky in the sense of, say you guys go up to Frank after like 4 or 5 hours in the cave, you're like, hey, Frank, I'm all caved out. I would like to go home.
he might just look at you and go, well, I'm not caved out for today. The exit is that way. So he would just sort of expect you to find your way back out of the cave, which is the difference in customer service between the 1930s and now. But I will explain how Frank tried not to kill people doing that in a little bit as well. We're going to keep talking about how he helped the cave first, though. Kept doing his tours until 1929. We had the stock market crash, went into the Great Depression. At that point, Frank didn't know how he was going to feed his family on 25-cent cave tours that nobody's taking, so he did some other business endeavors he would have done around prohibition in the cave. And then in 1933, his answer for the cave came in FDR's New Deal. The CCC was formed. Does anybody know what the CCC is? Civilian Conservation Corps. I love when people know what it is, and I also like to mention Conservation Corps still exists, guys. I worked for the AZCC in 2022. I did forestry work, trail maintenance, and invasive species stuff on Arizona's mountains and wilderness areas. Reason I bring it up is I like you guys just to appreciate, if you guys use trails, there are poor saps out there, even in the middle of nowhere, making sure that people can walk those trails. Also making sure that stuff like forestry work gets the help it needs so that our state doesn't burn down in a wildfire or invasive species don't take it over. But those guys live out in the middle of nowhere for 8 days at a time, then get 6 days off, then 8. And it's exhausting. I just like to bring appreciation to the people that, keep our state as beautiful as it is. With that said, the CCC was the original form of the Conservation Corps. It was founded during the Great Depression to get young guys some jobs. At the time, they would actually send home 75% of their wages to their families to get spent and further boost the economy, and they would work on any sort of public land. So national parks, state parks, public roads, anything publicly owned. They worked on the Hoover Dam. Frank wanted to get them into the cave, but he had a big old issue. He just bought the cave about a decade ago. That would make him a private owner. It would make this private land. So the CCC would not come work for him. 1934, Frank made a decision, contacted the state of Arizona, sold the cave back for absolutely nothing, $0.00. He did have some conditions to this deal, though. His first condition is he wanted to be conservator and manager of the cave. Fair enough, right? Second condition, he wanted to keep doing cave tours till he physically could not anymore. Frank kept giving cave tours on and off till the age of 84. He died at the age of 85 in 1957 in our gift shop. It was his house at the time, so it's not a cursed gift shop, it's the first little house that became a gift shop. And then his last condition is he wanted to get the CCC down here immediately working on the cave. So for 4 years and about 400 men, they're the ones who built all the floors, all the stairs, all the railings, and the original lighting system. Now, real quick, is anybody from Arizona lived here 5 to 10 years or know what a monsoon is? Yeah, so in 2021, we had a really good monsoon season, like one for the decades. It actually fried the electrical system in here. They had to come replace the original lighting system. I'm very thankful that happened because the original lighting system was in series, meaning it was like some old Christmas lights. If one light went out in the cave, you had to come check 2,000 light bulbs in a cave to get the lights to turn back on. So I'm very thankful I don't have to deal with that headache. But at the same time, am I trashing on the CCC's electrical work for the 30s? No, guys, having a lit cave in the 30s was ahead of its time. Also, everything was probably in series. Also, it lasted 80 to 90 years or something, so I think that's a good run for an electrical system built in the 30s. Another sort of point as the CCC doing a good job in the cave, underneath this floor is a 4 to 5 story drop. And you guys didn't really notice until I stomped on it, and even then it sounds pretty sturdy. No, the CCC did a good job building these floors and these stairs that we're going to be walking on today. Them being 90 years old and me working in here pretty much every day, I'm very thankful they did a good job. Also leads me into, we appreciate the CCC around here. We also do really appreciate Frank. Okay, Frank is the reason the cave's protected. He's also the reason you guys even get to see the cave. So for reference, you guys are seeing half a mile of the cave. We know 37.5 miles. That means all of our tours, just so you guys know, use about less than a mile of the cave. That means we have 36.5 miles plus of cave that are not touched by people. That is a good thing for the cave. That is how you protect caves, is you don't have people just walking through them all the time. At the same time, it's still good that we get you guys in here and we bring awareness to caves and we bring some appreciation to caves, because the other two options for the cave is it's completely shut off and nobody gets to come in here, or it's completely open and people trash it. So Frank is the reason we eventually got that balance where we show you guys a limited amount of the cave and protect the large majority of it. Now keep in mind, when Frank was doing his tours, he'd take it wherever he wanted. He also didn't know stuff like, hey, we shouldn't touch the cave with our skin because it's going to wear it down. But he stopped the cave vandalism. He tried his best for the 30s, 40s, and 50s, and he got it into the state's hands and worked with them to figure out a balance for the future. So we do really appreciate Frank for being forward thinking and taking care of the cave the best he could for the time. Now, with that said, Frank was a bit of a psycho. So how did he get you out of here without killing you? Well, something that's really convenient about this room is actually that. The drapery set. First thing we mentioned in this room, it's named after it. Reason being, we only have one of those. I've been in a lot more of this cave than you guys will be in today, and I can tell you, we only have one drapery set. That is a lot of cave bacon right next to each other. That's really long, uninterrupted by these steps that form these waterfalls. Just a huge area of cave bacon all next to each other, super compressed. That does not happen very often. That means once you're in the drapery room and you see that thing, you know you're here. You know you're in the right place. That's a good thing. Another good thing about this room is there are 5 natural entrances just to this room. So back when Frank was doing his original tours, it would have been a giant pit in here, but he still had 5 natural entrances to that pit. Now, they didn't have stairs at the time, but our first natural entrance would actually be this sort of stairway area we came down first. It used to be a natural entrance. Second one is actually that dark, stinky hole behind you guys over here. You could crawl out of, believe it or not. We will not be doing that today, but that's fun. And then over here, these 2 exits, this U-turn actually goes back to a big old drop-off, then a chasm from the fault line, and then there's a darker, stinkier, scarier hole that we're definitely not doing today. The stairs we will go down next will be our 4th entrance, and then our 5th entrance is actually back behind you guys. This dark area of the first aid kit and a gurney and stuff, which I promise isn't a good spot, would be your 5th entrance to the room. Point being, if Frank was trying to point you out of the cave, his first objective was get you to this room on your own. Once you were in here, he would have you use a cave formation on your own to point yourself out of the cave. So I'm going to have you guys scoot on over to this wall a little bit if we need to. But the cave formation that Frank used to use is called the cave witch. So we got the back of her scraggly hair right here. We got her eye, her wart, and her big old nose. And then she's got a single snaggle tooth because she's always munching on a limestone cookie down there. But she is the friendly cave witch, and her nose leads you where? Out. Yeah, in the general direction out. It definitely would have required some extra instructions from Frank so you didn't end up down there. But assuming he gave those to you, it was pretty successful for him. Now, the cave witch has been down here for a long time. She got a bit lonely. She conjured herself up a friend. What would a witch's friend be, guys?
Bat.
A bat? That's a good guess in the cave. What rhymes with bat?
Cat.
What type of cat? A black cat. Beautiful. And we actually have Shadow the cat right here keeping our cave witch company. I do like to point out we did not come down here and carve a cat. That is just one of the cutest natural coincidences I've seen in my life, actually, next to the cave witch. We also have some celebrities in here keeping our cave witch company. From the old comics, we have Blind Mr. Magoo. Did you guys get that picture of the cat? I know he's a popular one to get a picture of. Okay, but Blind Mr. Magoo, our Blind Mr. Magoo doesn't wear his glasses, but you can see his blind little eyes, his big old nose, his chin, and his cup of tea. And we all know Blind Mr. Magoo is a blind old man who constantly gets lost, so he leads you deeper into the cave. We also have some more modern celebrities in the house. We got SpongeBob and Patrick over here. Also got tiny little plankton in front of them if you guys are creative enough. Also had a 4th grade girl tell me that was Olaf from Frozen down there. Yeah, I told her mom that's a very creative mind that she should foster and also get checked out for psychosis just in case. Okay, we are going to head on over here, guys. We're going to head through this hallway. You guys are going to see a picture frame of what looks like 3 gold clocks. They're actually not clocks. That's our weather station. It's going to tell me that's about 70 to 71 degrees in the cave. How do I know that?
It's always 70, 71.
It's always 70 to 71 degrees in this cave. The only thing that really changes in here is the humidity. Has anybody been in another cave?
Yes.
Yes,
Was
we
it
have.
colder?
Oh, yes.
Yes, most caves on average are 52 to 55 degrees. Our cave is warmer for 2 big reasons. First off, it is a colossal cave, hence the name and the 37.5 miles. But of what we know of, it only goes about 120 feet at its absolute deepest. So what that means is you have a massive shallow cave. And that desert heat that radiates onto the earth gets retained within a shallow cave more than it would a deep cave, right? The second reason is this is what's called a dry karst cave. So a karst cave is a limestone cave where the formations are formed by water. We don't have any standing water at the bottom of the cave. We really don't have any active water in the cave at all right now. So it being a dry karst cave keeps it warmer than if it was a wet karst cave. What I will make sure to emphasize to you guys and teach you about a little bit later, this is a dry cave. It is not a dead cave. There is nothing, no cave on earth that is a dead cave. Okay, I'll explain that a little bit later, but a dry cave does not make it a dead cave. So don't call our cave dead and don't call any cave dead, but we'll get to that a little bit later. And I like to point out this hallway / room that we're coming into here. Do you guys see all the holes coming out of the ceiling? Yeah, our cave is a little bit weird for a cave. We don't have that softer limestone that dissolves super easily and forms these big old open cohesive rooms. We actually have a harder limestone that is, well, harder to dissolve and would have required this acidic mixture to essentially eat through the cave where there wasn't that softer mineral, which we have very little of that softer mineral. So what this results in is what I call a Swiss cheese style cave. It's a bunch of random tunnels going through the mountain, and then occasionally you get a room like the drapery room where a fault line went through it, and then you get that combination of a giant pit with the tunnels coming into that room. But you don't get these big old open, super cohesive looking rooms from that softer limestone dissolving all in the same place. So, Swiss cheese style cave. Bunch of random tunnels, smaller rooms, chasms, stuff like that make up this cave. Speaking of which, up to the right over there, that hole in the wall with a light in it, that is actually our bottomless pit. It is not bottomless. If you think about that for a second, that wouldn't make sense. That would mean it goes through the earth, and it doesn't do that. But it is about 5 stories deep. I did have a lady a couple months ago lean over to take a picture, dropped her phone. Does anybody want to guess where that phone is right now? It's at the bottom of the bottomless pit. So please don't drop your belongings. You will not get it back. We're going to go to the right in a bit, but if you guys look down the hallway to the left, you might see Elvis's face poking out of the wall on the left down there.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
Yeah, I call him the king of rock down here. Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, look out for Elvis down there. And then in here, guys, we got some Hohokam artifacts. So first off, you'll have a matate and a mano to grind up softer stuff, and then a mortar to grind up harder stuff. These are authentic Hohokam artifacts found within the cave. Just keep in mind they were found much closer to the entrance. The Hohokam people were not coming this deep into the cave, and they really weren't going into the cave much at all, remember. Okay. Good, perfect.
Where?
Is there a robin too?
Sir, oh, Robin.
It's just hanging from about 2 feet down from the top of the cave.
It's over in a different area we can't see from here.
That's cool.
Okay, guys.
It's all stationary.
I don't believe them. Okay, guys, this is our movies and popcorn room in here. We have had about 20 different movies and TV shows filmed in the cave over the years. Most of them were low-budget 70s horror movies, so not exactly cinematic masterpieces, but I like to mention Night of the Lepus. It's about these genetically modified giant bunny rabbits that live in the cave, and they go out and they attack a neighboring town. That neighboring town is a tiny model version of Ajo, Arizona they just built and then stuffed bunny treats into, then had the bunnies trample over it. And they did not have the technology to make the bunnies look scary other than a forced perspective and red paint. So it's actually a really silly, stupid watch, and it's on Amazon if you guys do feel like blowing a few bucks on that. Also, we had Sesame Street come down here back in the day. Specifically, we had Big Bird and Cookie Monster coming into the cave looking for their lost bird seed and hidden cookie treasure. That's a riveting Sesame Street episode. But Big Bird came right into this room and ran into our cave T-Rex here. So you got his eye, his eyebrow, his nose, and his big old smile down there. Actually weirdly anatomically correct for a rock. But Big Bird came into this room, saw our cave T-Rex. We all know he's a big old chicken. So he got scared, hit a 180, and blasted right through that wall right there.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, no, so that's called a keyhole formation. That is a natural formation you'll find in caves. But I do like to think we had someone who worked here back in the day writing letters to Sesame Street, like, hey, we got a Big Bird hole and a T-Rex, come do something with it. And they got something done with it, so I respect them for that. But moving on to the popcorn side of the room, you guys see this stuff on the wall? It looks like popcorn. Yeah. That would be cave popcorn, believe it or not. It actually brings me this white line going all the way around the room. That white line is a water line. So we think this room drained completely around 15 to 20,000 years ago. But to tell you the full story of this room, I actually need to go back to that fault line I showed you guys in the drapery room. So millions and millions of years ago, that fault line would have caused an upheaval in the area that formed the Rincon Mountains. As you're forming the mountains, you're pushing a prehistoric seabed up the mountain. That's where you get your different forms of limestone. You're also creating a lot of cracks in the rock for water to seep into that mountain. As water seeping into the mountain, it's picking up a few things. It's picking up calcite for our calcite crystals, carbon dioxide, carbonic acid, and sulfuric acid. Now, I used to be a chemistry teacher for a bit, and I know you don't need to be a chemistry nerd to know I just said the word acid twice. That is the acidic solution I mentioned that was eating through the mountain and forming the large majority of the hallways and what we're walking through in the cave. The other thing I mentioned though, other than calcite, is carbon dioxide, CO2. You guys probably know CO2 is what we use to carbonate our drinks. So for thousands of years at a time, this cave is varying levels of full with this acidic carbonated mixture. Now those bubbles, that carbonation from the CO2, actually end up trapping the calcite crystals in those bubbles around the water surface, and that's what forms your cave popcorn. So that is my favorite crystal in the cave because I'm a chemistry nerd and I just love that. But it's also called cave coral because it looks like coral once you get it all together, right? So yeah, cave coral is sort of what they call the whole thing, and then cave popcorn is what they call the specific little popcorn looking stuff. Really accurate names for it, though, I will say. Another cool thing about all of our calcite crystals is stalactites, stalagmites, flowstone, dripstone, cave popcorn, cave ice. Anything made out of calcite that's not covered in dust or bat poo will be what's called phosphorescent. So it'll sort of glow under my UV light there. And if I really hold it on there, take it off, you can see how it sort of slowly dissipates away, too. I'll explain why it does that in a bit. That is chemistry. I was a chemistry teacher. We'll get to that. But what I want to show you guys right now is, do you guys see all that greenish white color on the wall over here? That's all newish calcite growth that hasn't been covered in dust or bat poo yet. So in 2021, we had that monsoon season for the decades. This room came back to life. It was dripping water from the ceiling. It was 100% humidity in here. And there were a few inches of standing water on the ground for a few weeks. What this tells us is if we have a monsoon season for the decades, entire lower rooms of the cave will really come back to life and get some substantial calcite growth going on. If we have more of a normal monsoon season like this year, we do still have specific parts of the cave that have enough airflow and moisture to facilitate some calcite growth. Not a ton, but some. I just gave you guys 2 reasons why we don't call this a dead cave, right? Yeah. I'm going to tell you why you don't call any cave a dead cave now. Do you guys remember the crystal forest? That first room where I showed you guys the broken stalactites. Yes. Yeah, those stalactites will never see water in my lifetime, my kid's lifetime, my grandkid's lifetime, my great-grandkid's lifetime, my great-great-grandkid's. I could keep going. Reason I know I could keep going is, does anybody know the significance of when this room drained 15 to 20,000 years ago? Ice Age. The end of the last glaciation was around 15 to 20,000 years ago, and we are currently in an interglacial period, meaning there will be another ice age in 50 to 100,000 years. I can't tell you the exact date, I'm not a geologist, but point being is during the glaciations, Arizona is not a desert. It's like a temperate forest, like northern U.S., Canada, something like that, with a lot more lakes and rivers. That is the environment that would have facilitated the large amount of growth and formation of this cave with those acidic solutions and stuff. We don't live in that time, do we? Guys, people only live on Earth for 100 years if we're lucky. This cave is millions of years old. Caves don't operate on our life cycle. They will operate on the Earth's life cycle, which operates on the millions and billions of years. Mm-hmm. We can't call caves dead. Caves will change at a point when we're not on Earth anymore. So what we can call caves is dormant or active. This is a very dormant cave. Is it completely dormant? No. It does get some activity sometimes. But it's a very dormant cave. It's not a very active cave, okay? So we can call caves dormant or active, but we can't call them dead because they operate on a time scale that we just can't see. So that is way too permanent of a word for us to use for caves, even like this, that seem really inactive, but give it, 50,000, 100,000 years, this could be a very active cave if Arizona is environmentally different. Okay, and then we had this blocked off because honestly, other than Nolan, I just didn't feel like you guys were excited to get into the cave, so I just take that very personally. No, it's because we got airflow and moisture up there. It is monsoon season. The crystals will get some minimal growth going on this time of year, so we just protect it every monsoon season. That is called the altar room up there, though. Any guess as to what people used to do in the altar room? Yeah, I like to guess sacrifice because you guys are actually correct, and then I say close enough. No, but as soon as these stairs are built, CCC guys would go home after a long day of work. They'd actually smuggle their brides up there because they weren't supposed to get married when they were in the CCC, and then that's where the tradition started. We do still host small weddings from time to time in the cave. I have seen a guy get married up there in a full bat costume while his bride was in a very nice white bridal dress that did not stay white in a dusty cave. Not trying to trash on what made them happy. He was very ecstatic about it. He loved bats, and she seemed like she wasn't being held hostage. So overall, a success. It was a fever dream of a day at work for me, though, I will say. Okay, and then we are gonna head through this hallway. We got some display cases. I'm gonna explain them to you guys now while I got you all here instead of yelling down the hallway at you. Our first display case is our Bandits and Outlaws display case. There are some train robberies connected to the cave. Most notoriously, they robbed a Wells Fargo train down in Vail, then they hid out in here with the gold. They either hid the gold super deep in the cave and the police caught the bandits on the outside, or one of those bandits made out one of the 4 natural exits that can fit people to the cave with the gold. Either way, they never found the gold. So if you guys do stumble upon some, share it with the guy who knows how to get out of here today. Also, our second display case is the Frank Schmidt display case. You guys will see a candle and a rope he would have given you on one of his tours, as well as a carbide head lantern. Carbide head lantern is like strapping a blowtorch to your head, if you guys didn't know. It was also known that if you hit your head on a rock hard enough, the ingredients inside could overpressurize and explode. So yeah, we prefer LED headlamps nowadays for a reason. And then our last display case is our CCC display case. I just like to point out that the wheelbarrow in there weighs 75 pounds empty. It has a cast iron wheel. Then they would have been filling it up with rocks, mortar, railings, not exactly light stuff, and then transporting wheelbarrows that just weighed maybe a couple 100 pounds throughout a cave. So those CCC guys were very hungry to work and very strong, to say the least. We are going to be going down this staircase right here, which we call the domino staircase. We call it that because if our fellas in the back fall, we're all going down with you like dominoes. Just a normal narrow staircase with a railing, so don't overthink it or anything. Also, we will be walking through what used to be a river during the Ice Age at the bottom, so I will point that out to you guys down there. Yeah, but this right here would have been that river during the last glaciation. Yep, coming from the left. That's actually under the drapery room that we were in, and then it goes back into the next room we're actually going to go in. Why can't a T-Rex clap his hands?
Because you can't reach them.
They're actually all dead. I bought a handgun from a guy named T-Rex yesterday. Sort of a sketchy situation. Guy had a weird name, but he was a small arms dealer, so it checked out. Okay. Okay, guys, and this in here is our living room. So, you guys remember when I mentioned that the gift shop used to be Frank Schmidt's house? So the CCC actually built that house for him, as well as the original bathroom that's up there, as well as the break room that's still up there. As if they didn't do enough in the cave in 4 years. But back when Frank was living in that house in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, he did not have the luxury of air conditioning. So say you're dealing with 110 degree summer with no AC, but you just happen to own a 70 to 71 degree cave right outside your front door. Where are you going for the summer? Into the cave, right? So Frank in his sane way would rappel down 3 to 4 stories over there with his wife and kids. They'd bring down tables, chairs, board games, cards. Frank alleges they had a couch down here at one point, but they would stay down here for 6 days at a time sometimes just to escape the heat. This also was the first base camp for the first U of A exploration that went through the cave. They are the ones that mapped out 37.5 miles of cave, but could not map out a definitive end to the cave. Simply put, if we tried to map out the entirety of this cave nowadays, it would still be a massive, dangerous pain in the butt. Swiss cheese style cave. It's a bunch of random dozens of tunnels just going through the mountain whichever way they feel like it. So it is a really confusing cave to map out. Also, technology that we have nowadays isn't as effective in those random tunnels as opposed to big old open rooms. So it would just be a massive pain in the butt. I'm honestly amazed they were able to map out 37.5 miles of it in the 30s. It actually leads me to speculate how accurate that is. But the fact they did that without killing someone is crazy. With that said, one of those U of A explorers got out of that expedition. They actually walked right up to Frank, and excuse my language, he said, holy shit, that cave is colossal. It was actually how it got the name Colossal Cave, believe it or not. It was actually called Mountain Springs Cave before that, after Solomon Nick's hotel, the Mountain Springs Hotel. But nobody wanted to keep it named after the guy's hotel who hardened the cave so much, so that comment just sort of stuck and became the name to the cave.
Another cool thing about both these rooms right here, in between those stairs behind you guys is actually the lowest point of our tour. You're going to be about 7 to 8 stories below the surface. So it's not the lowest point of the cave, but it is the lowest point of our tour. And if you guys imagine it's a glaciation, there's a river next door, there's a bunch of water in the cave. You could probably imagine all this sand at one point in time was a big old pool of water. You have that big old pool of water, and then you still have calcite crystal hanging over that pool of water. And it's dropping calcite dust onto the water surface for thousands and thousands of years. Eventually that calcite dust crystallizes on top of the water and forms what's called cave ice. Now, cave ice could be less than a centimeter thick and you fall straight through it. It can also be a couple inches thick and it's completely safe to walk on. The scarier thing though is all the water underneath the cave ice eventually evaporates, drains away, it goes away and you're left with a hole. If that was a foot of water, that's now a foot hole. If that was 40 feet of water, you now have a 40-foot hole underneath cave ice that could be less than a centimeter thick. So if you guys are ever caving, look out for cave ice. It's genuinely one of the biggest hazards in caves. But since it's made out of calcite crystal, if it's not covered in dust or bat poo, what should it do under my UV light? Glow. It should glow, right? Naturally, you guys right here are walking on the only natural cave floor we're going to be walking on today. And this little section right here is all cave ice. Now, there's obviously a couple inches of it, so you guys aren't going to go through it. But since it's made out of calcite crystal, it is also phosphorescent. It'll hold that glow for my UV light for a little bit. We'll do an N. For you guys. But since I was a chemistry teacher, I'm going to explain why it does this. If you guys got far enough in chemistry, you should have done the flame test at some point, where you spray an element into a fire and then the fire changes color. You're exciting the electrons within that element, they're bouncing up in energy level, they're shooting out a different form of visible light. Same exact thing going on with the crystal, except UV light is the energy. I'm exciting the electrons within the crystal, they're shooting out that different form of visible light, and if I take the energy away, they're not excited anymore. So same exact process, just called phosphorescence within the context of the crystal. Does anybody know anything else that glows like this under a UV light? Don't be gross. Scorpions, thank you. That is the correct answer. Scorpions also have something within their exoskeleton that is phosphorescent. It's actually the same exact process, and they actually have a very similar compound to our crystals, which is why they glow pretty much the same exact color if you guys have ever hunted for scorpions. So same exact process going on there. Just think that's super cool. Okay, in between our stairs over here, I do require a happy dance to celebrate the lowest point of our tour. Just keep in mind, I have left a family of 4 down here for 3 days because they didn't dance like monkeys for me. So I take it very seriously. Okay.
You can do that.
This right here, guys, is a bone crusher. We call them that because we've actually had 3 tour guides turn around in this room and break their nose on bone crusher. So, guys, bone crusher is the big old ugly crystal hanging over the right side of the walkway. Please don't walk into bone crusher. He don't feel good. Also, this hallway we're about to go down is just a bit narrow, so watch out for your shoulders and just make sure you don't trip in that hallway. Just a bit narrow.
That's Bone Crusher looking at right there. And all of his friends.
But way up at the top of the stairs, you guys are going to see a hole at the top of the stairs with a light and what looks like a ladder up there. That's actually the CCC construction shaft. It is a hand crank construction shaft, and it is one of 2 ways they got all the materials into the cave. So for reference, all the rocks we're walking on are not from the cave. The floors, the stairs, this wall they built over there, stuff like that. All those materials were quarried about a mile from here, and then all the materials to build the cave, what we're walking on, were brought in through the front entrance or that construction shaft. Meaning those wheelbarrows did some serious distance to get to the movies and popcorn room, to say the least. Once again, those CCC guys were very strong. Another cool thing about that construction shaft, guys, is as you're leaving here today, you're going to take a right out of the parking lot. You'll see a big old exit sign. On the opposite side of that exit sign is where you curl down the hill out of here. On the inside of that turn at the end of the parking lot is what looks like a half-buried dog house. It's actually the top of the construction shaft, which means we are underneath our cars right now. Yeah, if that bothers you, I actually don't know a thing. And then, real quick, what do you guys get when you throw a miner down a mine shaft?
A mess.
Yeah, child endangerment charges.
I was going to say that they don't get to be old.
Also, I'd like to point out, this formation is why our drapery set is so rare. I was telling you guys that cave baking gets broken up by the waterfalls, by the sort of ledges. This is an example of that full waterfall. So we do call it our silent waterfall. We have multiple formations like this in the cave, but we only have one drapery set. So it just tells you the flowstone and the dripstone is more likely to do this. It's a lot rarer that you find something like the drapery set. And then real quick, guys, the next stairs we go down remind me of my uncle's New York apartment staircase. If you guys have ever been to New York, you catch my drift. Really steep staircase with way too narrow steps. So, and then if you guys are hearing voices, that would not be Lori's tour. You're just going crazy.
It's just the ghost.
Yeah. And then this in here, guys, is our last new room on the tour. This is our sinkhole. It's not actually a sinkhole in terms of the scientific or geological definition of a sinkhole. It just resembles one, which is why we call it that. But way down at the bottom down there, you guys might be able to see some stairs. We actually just walked over those stairs about 5 to 10 minutes ago. Any guess as to what room that was down there? We were just there.
Drapery?
Drapery, that's a little bit too early. I think we were just there.
The T-Rex?
Living room. It's the
living room.
Guys. And that actually makes this Frank's shortcut. So this is the 4 to 5 or 3 to 4 stories that he'd rappel down with his wife and kids. Like, that's a lot better. They would actually go over this ledge right here. They would use this stalagmite back here as the anchor for the rope, and you guys can actually see the rope wearing on the stalagmite itself. There's also a tiny little hook down here. For the love of God, I hope Frank didn't put anybody's body weight on, because that thing is terrifyingly small. Also, I do have a running theory that Frank used to use this stalagmite right here, then it broke off in some sort of slight tragedy, and then he had to move back to this one. But that's just a running theory I have based on the context clues in front of me. That's not something Frank would ever admit. Speaking of things Frank would never admit, he was totally an expert in safety, right? Yeah, totally. So he would actually put a burning candle somewhere next to his rope. So all that dripping sort of blue stuff, that is all candle wax from the burning candle he would put next to his rope. So yeah, Frank, expert in safety. Luckily, we do know his wife and kids survived, so that's good news. He also didn't have any reported cave deaths on any of his cave tours. Yeah, operative word there is reported. You didn't really report a cave death back in the day, so I can't tell you how many bodies he hauled out of here or threw deeper into the cave that we haven't found yet. But according to Frank and what we found, 0. That said, last thing I'm going to show you guys for our tour. Do you guys know those people that play music off the crystal bowls and crystal glasses? Yeah, I'm not going to start serenading anybody, but our calcite crystals do have the same phenomena going on, where if I... Sounds like they're hollow, right? Yeah. They're not. They look like a cinnamon roll actually on the inside. They got that solid calcite crystal structure. Is so perfect and uniform that allows it to resonate that sound if the crystal is exposed enough and hanging enough to actually reverberate and resonate that sound. But we do call them cave bells. And depending how big they are, what they're connected to, you will get different notes for your cave bells. I like to mention Luray Caverns in Virginia. They bring essentially what is a piano into the cave. They hook it up to all the stalactites, and you can go in and watch them play music off of the cave itself. So if you guys are ever in Virginia, definitely check out Luray Caverns. With that said, I'm still looking for an excuse to go out to Virginia to see it in person. I just don't get many other excuses to go to Virginia. Not really a history guy. But anyways, that is going to about wrap up our tour. We're going to head on out of here past Old Baldy. I'm going to hit a couple of my favorite cave bells on the way out of here too. First off, thank you for being such a great group for me. Genuinely, this is a big old group, and you guys were not a pain in my butt. So I really appreciate that. It makes my job easier. You guys are actually a lot of fun. So just makes my job better. I really appreciate that. Also, we have a lot of school groups this time of year, and I have a lot of 4th and 5th grade girls that come in here emboldened without their parents, and they feel the need to like physically degrade their tour guide. So I've been called crusty, dusty, and vintage in the cave more times by 10-year-old girls than I care to admit. So just a 28-year-old guy punching my steering wheel on the way home because I'm thinking if I should internalize a comment from a 10-year-old girl. That is probably one of my favorites in the cave. That's and here's Old Baldy. You guys want to rub his head on the way out?
Rub the baldy and then rub the sanitizer into your skin after.
Yeah.
What is this? Friday the 13th? I think this is slowly turning into who can be the bigger cornball. I gotta say, I'm quite the competition. Any of my people in my comment section will point that out.
I feel you. I feel you.
Yeah, some of them are just flat out mean, but they are on a list that, let's just say, they won't get any fame out of it.